Hi everyone, I'm joined today with Pam Smith, who's very, very kindly come along to talk to us from the Intensive Interaction Institute. I think that's right. Yeah. So we're really, really excited to have Pam, and Pam's going to be running as one of our monthly sessions with us in a couple of weeks. I think it's on the 7th.
Tuesday the 17th, yes it is. It's 10:30 till 12 on Tuesday the 17th, yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do a little bit of a taste of it, and to sort of tell you a little bit more about what it is that you'll be talking about in the session, and to sort of give people an overview of what I can't even speak. Intensive interaction is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to get it out there. So Pat, did you want to introduce yourself and just give us a little bit about your background and that kind of thing?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks ever so much, Leanne, for inviting me along, and I'm so grateful to Emily for inviting me along to speak to everybody as well. It's absolutely terrific. So yeah, my name's Pam Smith. I'm working as a trainer for the Intensive Interaction Institute now, but that's after 30 years of working in special education. So my background's as a special education teacher, and I've worked at various schools over the years. I've worked at Manamead and Wartonley, the Virginia Water site that's recently started up, and Fremantle School. So I've been involved with a lot of schools over the years, and worked with people with all kinds of disabilities, so severe learning difficulties, complex needs. For the last 20 years, I've sort of specialised in autism, but still been working with a whole range of people as well. And I've also got my own youngster who's got autism as well, who is now 28. Excuse me. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat for some reason.
Always happens when you record that.
Yeah, I know. But that's where I'm coming from, really. So I'm coming from an education background, but also as a parent, and that kind of thing has really informed my practice, all the way through when I've been working, because it just gives you that sort of dual perspective on what you're doing. So you're always looking at, when you're teaching, what's also going to be useful for people in their daily lives as well, and as they get older, really. So yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's amazing, because I think as a parent, it gives you that I guess that extra level of understanding, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Really be able to feed into the work that you do. So that's brilliant.
And I think it makes you realise how important it is to be so inclusive of the family, because again, we never actually educate a child just in isolation. They are always as part of the family, and that's what you're all about. And so to have the opportunity to work with you is absolutely superb. It really is. And as I say, intensive interaction is something I've used in my work life and in my home life, because I've used it with children I work with, and I've used it with my own child as well. So it's sort of gone right the way across the board, really. So
brilliant. So I'm going to ask the sort of basic question, but so what is intensive interaction?
What is intensive interaction? Well, that's a great question. Intensive interaction, it's the most important thing I think to get across about it is the fact that it's completely to do with social communication. So if you think about, there's two different types of communication that I'm sure there's functional communication, which is all those sort of concrete things with a single outcome. So things like, how long are we going to be talking today? Can I have a drink? What's your car registration number? All of those kind of things. That's functional communication, and we often do an awful lot of work on that with our youngsters. So it's often sort of naming things, or naming colours, or doing counting, that kind of stuff. But there's that whole body of social communication that we are all involved in every day. And when you look at the research for this, it's around about 75% of our communication between people is social communication. And it's just that chit chat. It's sometimes called social glue, because it is the thing that really binds us together as people, but it's actually got not very much meaning behind it at all. It's just that way of connecting with each other, and that's the bit that sometimes gets overlooked with our youngsters, because we're so busy actually focusing on the functional needs and making sure they're getting their needs met, which is absolutely essential, don't get me wrong. But the social stuff is absolutely vital, because that actually underpins everything. And without all of those things, like being able to share space with somebody, being able to read somebody's facial expression, being able to take turns and join in with activities and that kind of thing. You know, there's actually, it's very, very difficult to access the world and to actually even understand about communication if you haven't got that bit, because if you haven't learned where you finish and somebody else starts, and that it's actually fun to be with somebody, then it's very hard to engage in anything else. So we always call that the fundamentals of communication, all those bits that are the underlying bit, like the foundations of everything else we do, the foundations for learning, the foundations for everything out in the world. We call those the fundamentals of communication, and that's what intensive interaction is actually based upon. And it was started up by Dave Hewitt back in the 1990s. He was working with young adults. It was then a long stay hospital, because those were in the days where it used to be adults were in long stay hospitals, and they were trying to do all these activities with them, you know, really nice activities, backward chaining to get independence and doing sort of tabletop activities and stuff. But it was really, really hard to engage some of them, because they were sort of so involved in their own sort of, you know, they're flapping or they're rocking or they're lining up or they're whatever they were doing, that it was very, very hard to get them engaged in anything. And they came across some research from America which had actually shown how communication starts right from the very early stages. And they looked at the people they were working with and realized that that very early level of communication had been completely missed. And there's several reasons that can happen. There's a whole load of reasons that can happen. It's nothing to do with the way parents interact with people. It's all to do with the person, you know, things that are actually impacting on the person themselves. But it's very hard if those fundamentals are not learned at the early stage. There's a whole lot of learning that needs to be done, and it needs to be repeated over and over and over again, which is why we call it intensive interaction. And it's very much a way of using communication between two people where one is a more skilled communicator. So if you're the person who's got the skilled communication, working with somebody who's got social communication or communication difficulties, we're the ones that can actually adapt our language. We're the ones that can adapt our communication. And it's a matter of not expecting them to meet us, but for us to meet them. So we are actually joining in with their world. We're actually sort of learning how to speak their language and making it as easy as they possibly can to learn to be with others and to really enjoy communicating with them. So that's it in a nutshell, really. But there's, you know, lots of tips and techniques that I can pass on to people at the talk if they come along on the 17th, and you know, show how we can actually simplify our behaviour to help that. So
absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting hearing you talk, and you're so right. It's that it's sometimes we focus so much on the kind of, you know, the things that we think are really important, and of course some of them are, of course they are, but it's that sort of that relationship, I guess, that sometimes gets missed if you can't interact with the person, that it makes it just takes that away from it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's the fundamental thing of everything is that relationship. And again, you know, the speech and stuff that can come later on, it can come alongside. But if you're working on those foundations of communication, that fundamentals of communication, that is really going to give you your starting point and your building blocks for everything else to develop from there. And again, you know, we use it not only with people who are pre-verbal, but also with people that have got language, because you just use the principles in the same way. So you're reducing everything in a very similar way to how you would with anybody that you're doing intensive interaction with, but you're actually just honing in on their interests and again meeting them in their world. So my boy is now, oh gosh, 28. He was 28 last week. And he's actually studying for a master's degree at Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama in Cardiff. So he sings sings opera.
Amazing.
But that still doesn't take away from the fact that he has huge difficulties with his autism, because he's always going to have that social communication difficulty. He's always going to have difficulty with understanding, you know, people's gestures, people's body language, and all of those things. So, you know, I know when I'm with Mika after he's had a really, really long day at college, that I need to really adapt my way of being, even in that situation. because otherwise Mika can get very, very overloaded. And just there's lots of miscommunications and it doesn't go well at all. So it's actually those same principles, whether somebody has got language or whether they don't have language. If they've got a social communication difficulty or a communication difficulty, this is always what we're concentrating on.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting, because I mean I have two autistic daughters.
Right. Okay. Oh, how interesting.
And they're both so I've got a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Amazing.
And they're amazing. They are amazing, but they're both totally quite eloquent and verbal and everything like that, but social communication is a real difficulty. And actually hearing you speak, I can really see how there's things that could be done to help to help foster those relationships in the future. So no, it sounds, and actually you've just answered my next question, because I was going to say about whether it was just for those pre-verbal or language.
It goes right across the board, and it's also for people of any age as well. So when I do the training, it's going to be very much giving people sort of principles and tools and the theory and the perspective of how to use it, because it is something that is used with people with any kinds of difficulty, any kinds of disability or special need. And we use it with little ones as young as 2 or even before, but 2 is usually sort of where we start. And the oldest people that we're working using intensive interaction with are in their 80s and 90s. Because we find that people that have had problems with dementia, they still have that social bit of communication left quite often, and so you're still able to connect at that level, even if you've lost the functional communication side. But we use it right the way through the age range and with any kind of disability, and that's what I absolutely love about it. There's no pictures, there's no sort of special resources. It's just all about the way in which you interact with people. And I think that's what makes it absolutely unique among a lot of the approaches that you use.
Absolutely. And for families who have got, say, older children, and if they haven't had this kind of experience, would it be, still applicable for them to start?
Absolutely.
I mean, can you start at any sort of age?
Any age? Yeah, absolutely. Again, when I do my training next week, I'll be showing a video to start off, which just shows the range of people that we work with. And one of the young chaps that I show in that, he's a young man in his 50s, but he only started doing intensive interaction, and he started sort of having experience of intensive interaction when he was in his 50s. And even at that stage, his mum said that in a year she noticed such a difference in the way he was, in his mood, in his level of well-being, and also the fact that he was socially included, because it was very easy for Kevin, the chap that I'm talking about, just to be very sort of isolated. But it enabled him to be socially included, which was absolutely brilliant. And so she,
I mean, I mean, that's just it's giving that, those sort of life chances, isn't it? And the sort of quality of life is
definitely,
because we do hear frequently from families where their children or young people are so isolated, and I often, and I know from my own experience, but we hear from families that their child is not picked for the team, or their child's not invited to the party, or and then they are just put into that isolation. And a lot of that is because, like you say, whoever's communicating with them isn't able to get into their level of communication.
It's that thing of expecting them to come up to our level, rather than actually meeting them where they are. And again, the amazing thing is that if you do get down to that level, sorry, that sounds awful to say get down to that level, but if you do meet the person at that level, the progress can be such that they are then able to access this kind of thing with their siblings, with their peers. But it's just a matter of everybody understanding about how that approach works, because what we say with intensive interaction is the more people that are actually doing it with the person, the better. So if you've got just not only people at school, but people who are at home, people who are in the respite care team, relatives, if they all know how this approach works, it can make such a difference. It really can. So I mean, I think it's magic, as you
absolutely,
as you can can tell. But,
yeah, no,
yeah,
of course. And is this something that schools can access? Or,
yeah, absolutely.
or how do
absolutely.
they? How would they?
Yeah. I mean, we train at the institute. We train people that we call coordinators, who actually are people that come to us for quite lengthy training, and then they actually go out and train within their schools.
Right.
But so the Intensive Interaction Institute itself, we do run training courses for schools, for speech and language therapists, for adult care services, for people, for nurses, for GPs. For parents, obviously. So there's a lot of training which is actually available through the Intensive Interaction Institute. And so if you go on the website, the intensiveinterAction.org, that will actually get you to all the training for that. And we can, we work with individual families if they want consultations, or we actually go out into educational establishments or wherever we're asked to go, really. And again, like I'm doing for Emily and for Family Voice, some of that will be online, some of that will be face to face. So just over the last month, I've been in Colchester, Manchester.
Oh wow.
I'm going up to Basingstoke in a couple of weeks' time. I've got something coming up in Cwmbran in Wales.
Wow.
So we're all over the place, working, and people dialing in from Northern Ireland, Aberdeen.
Wow.
It's just
amazing.
It is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think once people start working in using this way, it just becomes your natural style of being, so you don't even have to think about
absolutely
social relationships all the time.
It sounds brilliant. And I think it's really interesting because obviously we've got our autism strategy that's very recently been launched, and which was very much co-produced by autistic people and their families.
Brilliant.
And it's a lot of it is that raising awareness, but also that kind of training of knowing how to interact with autistic people. And actually this really sort of resonates with that, I think, and it kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Because it's that interaction in the right way, isn't it?
Yes, totally. And I think the thing is, it's all to do with being person-centered. Everything is very person-centered. It's also led by the person. So again, if the person's not in the mood and they get up and they walk off, you don't sort of go after them and say, excuse me, I think it's fine, I'm trying to do intensive interaction with you. You just, they go because they are in charge, but they're very much in charge, And again, we try not to put pressure on people and say, don't, for goodness sake, try and do this all the time, just 10 minutes a day of doing this is great, because when you're actually doing this as the person who's facilitating the communication, you are working so hard with actually being in the moment with that person, and not focusing and observing what they're doing and trying to work out how you're going to join in, what you're going to do next, how you're going to pick up on the nuance within that activity. But you're also reflecting all the time about, gosh, I wonder why they did that. I wonder what that meaning of that was. So, it is that thing that the person you're working with, it will be hard work for them as far as, filing away all the bits that they're learning, all of the learning. But it's also quite exhausting if you're doing this.
Of course, an
intensive interaction practitioner, because you are so focused on that person and tuning in with every bit that you've got, every bit of your senses to really promote it. So
gosh, no, it's I've learned so much today already, and it's just brilliant. And actually it would just be so wonderful if I'm just thinking of children and young people particularly, if everyone, everyone's probably a bit of a thing, but if in school and and at home, and the people that they're sort of closest to,
absolutely
who do this, it would just make the relationship,
oh my goodness,
it would just enhance it, wouldn't it, for everybody.
And I think the thing about it is it's a very, very powerful approach, but it is the simplicity that is the brilliant thing about it. And that's the thing that I come back to all the time when I'm talking to people. And the thing is that we know that all of your parents are going to be doing a lot of this anyway.
Yeah, of course.
It's just the natural way of being with our children. But it's just having that bit of time sometimes to reflect on, oh gosh, am I doing a little bit too much? Am I doing a little bit too fast? Am I doing a bit, too much leading? Should I be letting them take the lead a bit more? And it's just that thing of getting that reflection into what you're doing that is really our focus.
I think it's quite empowering as well as
Very
a parent, because I think as a parent, of autistic children myself, sometimes you feel a bit useless almost.
Absolutely.
Because you don't really know how to respond, and you don't really know how to react, and you try your absolute best, but sometimes you don't know. So actually it's almost from what you're saying, it sounds quite empowering. If as a parent you can then know how to respond in the right way,
and we don't get it right 100% of the time, because nobody does, but it is that thing that it does give you a few more tools. That's
absolutely,
a few more tools. And I know very much that from having had experience of doing intensive interaction, I know when I go and see Mika, if he's quite a sociable chap, and so he does a lot of masking and does a lot of sort of pretending to be typically developing all day.
I know that well.
By the time Mika gets back at home at the end of the day, they're absolutely exhausted, and so at that point, if I'm there, we might even just type to each other rather than speaking. Now, I wouldn't have known that without actually doing my intensive interaction training and realizing that actually they are absolutely exhausted by themselves. They can't do talking anymore, but we can still do communication. We can still do non-verbal communication. We can still do a lot of non-verbal activities together. And again, it just gives you the permission to do that and to be in the moment with the person as they need things, at the time they need it. So
no, it sounds absolutely amazing. I'm excited. I think everyone needs to go and sign up, because it does. It sounds really, really great.
Well, we'd like to take over the world, Leanne. We haven't quite got there yet. World domination is next on the list. So.
Oh well, I think this has given families a really great sort of introduction to it, and obviously parents will be able to access this recording from now on. But if you want to book onto this, we will put the email address for Emily, who's coordinating the event, in the comments of this video. So please do book on. And thank you so much, Pam, for
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you for asking me.
And teaching me so much. It's been really, really wonderful. And of course, thank you so much for offering to do the thing on the 17th as well. We really appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. I'm really looking forward to it. It'd be great. So thank you. Fantastic. Okay. Thanks then, Leanne. Thank you.
Thank you.